All right. So today we're going to kind of go through, like I said, there's pieces of 3/5 compromise, kind of how the Constitution came to be folded to pieces of the Constitution, people that were asking about. So basically, it's building that Constitution to it getting ratified in like 1787. Okay, or getting built then, and then getting ratified a few years later. Okay? So after everybody realizes that the Articles of Confederation is basically worthless, okay, they work on trying to get it changed. So the first thing they try is this thing called the Annapolis meeting, okay? Basically just attempting to discuss new changes to the Constitution, okay? It was September of 1786. Problem was nobody really knew exactly what was going on with it, okay? And it was only attended by 12 people representing 5 states. So there's not much you can do with that. Okay, so at this Annapolis meeting, they then decide, okay, a little less than a year from then, they're going to call a meeting in May of 1787 to further discuss changes and basically call this what you guys have heard the Constitutional Convention at this point. Okay, so this is the start of creating the new Constitution for the United States. Yeah. So, Philadelphia Convention, or some people just refer to it as like the first Congressional Convention, that kind of stuff, okay, or Constitutional Convention, excuse me. So, this meeting met with 55 people, okay, represented 12 of the 13 states. Makeup of these people were almost all of them were wealthy of some sort, whether they were farmers or merchants, okay. Most college graduates, many of them had political experience of some sort. There were lawyers, some people would have been doctors, that type of stuff. Many were coastal residents from larger cities. Okay, not a lot of people from rural areas, and this is kind of important. Okay, so the problem is you got a lot of people, especially so you're talking 1787 at this point. Most of what's going on is rural, so there was not a lot of representation with the rural community at that point. Good? Scott, good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so at this convention, things they were looking at, okay? So kind of philosophies they were looking at, okay? Human nature, which is self-interested, okay? Political conflict, which leads to factions, okay? Objects of government, including preservation of property, and then the nature of the government, okay? How are we going to set this thing up so, as it looks here, as no one faction rises over another or overwhelms another, okay? So basically, how do we keep a government from taking over an entire country, such as the King of England, that kind of stuff? How do we keep that from happening? So these are the questions that are basically being asked that they want answered to create the new ruling law for the United States. Okay, so these are the big ones that they hit right here. Okay, human nature, political conflict, preservation of property, and then what is the nature of the government that's going to run the United States from here forward. Okay, so yeah. All right. Good. All right. Equality issues. Okay. So equality representation of the states. So underneath the Articles of Confederation, each state had one representative, one vote. Okay. Now, based on whether you were Federalist or anti-Federalist, this is all back and forth here. Okay, so first one, New Jersey plan. Okay, equal representation in the states. Okay, equal representation in the states. Which side do you think would want that, Federalist or anti-Federalist? So, just to get you a look here, because it's hard to understand there, okay? So, Federalists are the ones that really, really want to change with the Constitution. Anti-Federalists are the ones who don't want a strong central government, okay? So they, in a weird way, like the pieces of the Articles of Confederation more, okay? So this one here would be more of a anti-Federalist look, okay? More that's still representing the Articles of Confederation. So Virginia plan, population-based representation, okay? This would be a big Federalist piece, okay? To get more equalness between states. Bigger states would have a little bit more say, that type of stuff. Now, with that, nobody could agree on which one they wanted, okay? So this is where you get into that Connecticut Compromise, or on that sheet you guys worked on before, also known as the Great Compromise, okay? So what it was is they literally took both plans and used them both, okay? So the top one would be how we end up getting the representation for the Senate, okay? Two senators per state, no matter what size you are. Virginia plan would be how we got the House of Representatives. You get representatives based on the amount of people in your state, okay? Great Compromise pushes that together to get a bicameral House. You get Congress, which is the Senate and the House, okay? Then they talk about slavery, okay? Anti-Federalists don't want slavery counted, don't think slaves should be counted into anything. They're not people, okay? Federalists go with, yeah, they should be counted into this. They are representatives. This is their United States too, okay? So with that, you get the 3/5 compromise. Basically, owning of slaves, they would equal in the population count, nothing else, okay? Just the population count, basically for that Virginia plan piece, okay? As 3/5 of a person, okay? So based on population, you have your population, say, and just for an equal number, 1,000 people, okay? And then inside that you have 100 slaves. So your population count would then be 160. Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay, sorry, I think I said 1,000, didn't I? Yeah. Make it even easier. 100 people, population. Slaves, you have 100 slaves. Your population would equal 160, not 200. Does that make sense? Okay, so 3/5 of 100 slaves would be 60. Okay. Bottom one, political equity and voting left up to states. Okay. So, and that still happens today. Okay. So, other than federal elections, okay, so like anything that would deal with basically just the president. Okay. Everything else, the states deal with the voting. Okay, and that's still today. So that's why we have, the Ohio Board of Elections, counties run Board of Elections, all this. So that's held inside the states. The only one that's outside the states is the federal government ones, which really the only federal government elected official is the president. Okay, so the issues that get resolved from this, and this may be hard to see on video here, but equality of states, okay, these are the problems: slavery, equity, and voting. Okay, so solution, you get that Connecticut Compromise and equality of states. Okay, slavery, what should be done? Okay, you end up getting that 3/5 compromise with slavery. Equality in voting should be based on universal manhood, suffrage, all this kind of stuff. Basically fix the issue, let the states decide qualifications for voting at that point. Okay, so those are the ones that are taken care of, or that they're during this, they are taking care of it in creation of the Constitution. Okay, we got economic issues. Okay, states had tariffs on products from other states. Okay, paper money is basically worthless at this point due to the Articles of Confederation. Congress couldn't raise any money. Okay, actions taken at this point. Powers of Congress are going to be strengthened. Powers of the state are going to be limited. So, Articles of Confederation, states had darn near all the power. Okay, underneath the Constitution, their power is going to be way less at this point. Okay, way less. Okay, so these are the economic issues we're dealing with at this point, and how we are going to take care of these during it. All right. So, powers of Congress. Okay, so there's a bunch of them on here, and like I said, I'll be posting this online, so I'll hit a few of these. So, underneath the new Constitution, powers that Congress gets: they can levy taxes, pay debts, borrow money. Big one: coin money, regulate its value. Okay, regulate interstate and foreign commerce. Okay, so states can't. So Indiana couldn't charge us $1 billion to trade in whatever. Okay, establish uniform laws of bankruptcy. This is my favorite one. Punish piracy. So we could punish pirates at this point. Yes. All right. And at this point, they're literally talking about like high sea pirates. Okay, not like stealing music off the internet. Okay. So punish counterfeiting, standard weights and measures, which they kept. Post office, those type of things. Things now the states can't do. Okay. Can't pass laws impairing obligations of contracts. So basically, you can't pass a law in the state that would supersede a law from the federal government. Okay, so laws go down; they don't go up. Does that make sense? Okay, so can't coin money. Okay, require payment of debt in paper money. Okay, so you actually can't just say, "Here's our credit card, we're good for it." Okay, no, you actually have to give them money. Okay, can't tax imports or exports from abroad, so they can't just trade freely with other countries. Okay, and then other key things: new government assumes national debt. So any debt underneath the Articles of Confederation for any state got absorbed by the federal government. That was a big one. Okay, so the federal government took care of that. That's the way they got levy of taxes. We'll pay all the debts off, but we're taxing you guys. Okay, everybody thought that was a pretty sweet deal. Okay, guarantees Republican form of government. Must respect civil court judgments, contracts, and that kind of stuff. Okay, so this is what you're getting into, what we deal with now and today. Okay? Individual right issues. Okay, this was a big sticking point on getting this thing ratified. Okay, some of them were written into the Constitution. Okay, prohibits the suspension of writ of habeas corpus. We'll get into all these terms later in the year, but so basically, writ of habeas corpus. If Bryce Phelps does something illegal, you have to be present to be tried, convicted, all this kind of stuff. We can't just convict you and you never have a trial. So, writ of habeas corpus literally means produce the body. So the body has to be produced in court. Okay. No bills of attainder. Okay. Basically, all that really talks about is you cannot convict a group of people based on a similar liking without having cause to do it. Okay, so think of like, try to make this easy. Think of it like our football team. Somebody does one thing bad. You can't convict the entire team. You can't just do it without probable cause that everybody was involved in it. Because at this point, if the government didn't like your group of people, they would just convict all of you for the issue of one person. Okay. No ex post facto laws. Okay. And this one actually came about 6-8 years ago when marijuana started to be legal in some states. So if something was legal when you did it one day, the next day it's illegal, you can't be convicted because it's now illegal. Even though you did it when it was legal, you can't be convicted or charged with a crime when you did it that it was legal. Okay, so just one of those weird things that when they would start making laws, just because you did something 2 weeks ago and now it's illegal 2 weeks later, they would start charging you for it, that you did it at that point. Okay, religious qualifications for holding office prohibited. Okay, so you don't have to be Christian or whatever it might be. Strict rules for evidence of conviction of treason, and right to trial by jury in any criminal case. Okay, some were not specified. This is the problem. Okay, some of these rights didn't get specifically said in the Constitution. Okay, until later, which is like freedom of speech, expression, rights of people accused of a crime weren't specifically said in the Constitution. Okay, and these were, like I said, were sticking points between Federalists and Anti-Federalists Federalists are like, well, you have all your rights. Anti-Federalists are like, well, you're not really saying them. You say they're there, but I can't read them. Okay? So, to prevent tyranny, this is called the Madison model, proposed this type of government. Okay? Limited majority control, separating powers, checks and balances, establishing a federal system. Okay? A lot of people say the United States is democratic. That is not true. Okay? We have pieces of democracy. We are a federal republic. Okay? Yes, we do vote on things and that kind of stuff, and that gives you that piece of democracy. Okay? But once we vote those people in, they make the decisions for us. That is not democracy. Okay? Democracy would mean we vote on anything that comes up. Okay? So this was the Madison model. The two big ones are the ones in the middle: separation of power, creating checks and balances. Okay? So, constitutional electoral process. So, you got all these voters. Okay? Voters at this time vote directly to elect anybody in the House of Representatives. Okay? So if you vote them, they win. Majority rules. That person gets elected. Okay? Next, voters vote on people in the state legislature. Okay? So our Ohio Senate or Ohio representatives. Those people would appoint senators at that time. Senators did not get directly elected. Okay? So, next, voters vote for the president based on that electoral college. Okay? The state legislators would eventually vote for whoever the president would be. Okay? So there was some direct election. There's a lot of not direct election. See where democracy comes in and democracy isn't there all at the same time? That's what this is. Okay? And we'll talk more about the electoral college later. Okay? Separation of powers, checks and balances. Okay? I'm gonna assume you guys have a decent understanding of what separation of power, checks and balances actually mean. Okay? So checking each branch. Okay? They have powers that they can't do. They have powers that they can't do, or that they can't do. Okay? Back and forth, check them, just to make sure legislative, somebody doesn't get too powerful. Okay? So, all right. So now the big one right here is you do want this a republic. Okay? So this is a constitutional republic. This is the definition of a republic. Okay? A form of government in which people select representatives to govern them and make laws. Favors the status quo, and if you know anything about government, it makes change is slow. Government is slow to get things done. Okay? So once we get to this point, you get basically the term saying here, end of the beginning. Okay? The document was approved, so the Constitution was approved in this Constitutional Convention, but not unanimously. So now it was going to have to be ratified by the states. So we've gotten through a big tough part, but this thing isn't done yet. Right? All right. So this is where you get your Federalists, Anti-Federalists look on things, okay? So, you got your Anti-Federalists, which we talked about a minute ago, okay? Usually small farmers, shopkeepers, laborers. They wanted a strong state government, weak national government, direct election of officials, shorter terms, all this. A lot of what was in Articles of Confederation, okay? Bottom one, strengthen protection for individual liberties, okay? Federalists on the other side, large landowners, wealthy, merchants, professionals, all that type of stuff. Weaker state governments, strong national, indirect elections, longer terms, government by the elite, and then expected few violations of individual liberties. Okay? So these are where all these sticking points are between these people. Okay? And these are very prominent people on both sides. People that would be all throughout history were anti-federalists and federalists. Okay? So it's not like The Anti-Federalists were just random people in history that nobody knew about. They were very prominent people, okay? So, this is where we get into what we were kind of reading, Federalist Papers, that kind of stuff. Collection of 85 articles written by Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison under the name Pugilist, okay, to defend the Constitution. Now, you guys also should have read Brutus I, which is an anti-Federalist paper, which is basically saying why this thing's dumb, okay? So, the biggest sticking point, if you go back, was individual rights, protecting people's individual rights. Federalists and anti-Federalists got together, started talking, what is going to help get this thing passed and ratified? The biggest of the sticking points, there were multiple things, don't get me wrong, were direct explanation of individual rights. What are the people's rights, okay? This is why the Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution. It wasn't originally there, okay? So, first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution in response to some of the anti-federalist concerns and lack of basic liberties. Okay, there's a lot of stuff in the Constitution that gives you your rights. There's a lot of stuff in the Constitution that the Federalists were basically saying, well, it's implied. Anti-Federalists are like, if it's implied, it's not there. It doesn't make sense. We need reassurance that the people's liberties are not going to be taken away from them. Boom, you get the Bill of Rights. This was a compromise to get this thing ratified, okay? So without the Bill of Rights, this thing could have died back then, okay? So we're not gonna go through all 10 amendments, we're gonna hit those here soon, okay? But most of them, you know, that kind of stuff, okay? We'll hit the other ones as we keep going. Okay, so ratification. Lacking majority support, Federalists specified that the Constitution be ratified by state conventions, not by state legislatures. Okay? Delaware is the first one to ratify it, December 7th, 1787. This is why technically Delaware is the first state in the Union. So if you look up what is the first state in the United States, technically it's Delaware, just because they ratified the Constitution first. Okay? New Hampshire's approval, the 9th state to ratify, made the Constitution official about 6 months later. Okay? So you got December, so right around late May, June, right around there. That was the 9th state, so they had a majority, so the Constitution would be ratified at that point, okay? And basically go into effect. Okay. And we'll get into this a little bit more, but just talking about how, so the other piece of this, so you put in this Bill of Rights, the people at that point knew that things would change over time. How do you change those amendments? How do you change the Constitution? All this type of stuff. This is how it gets done. Okay? There's 4 ways to basically change the Constitution. Okay? First one right here. Congress proposes an amendment by 2/3 each house. 2/3 vote in each house, excuse me. Okay? They get it. Goes on to a ballot. State legislatures can ratify an amendment by 3/4 of the states. So if it goes straight across, if you're 18, you get to vote on that amendment. Okay? So if 3/4 of the states say, yep. Okay? Basically you need 33 states to say yes. And then you can amend the Constitution, add amendments, that kind of stuff to it. Okay? Second one, same idea here at the beginning. Okay? 2/3 vote each house. Then you go this way. All right. State conventions can ratify an amendment by 3/4 of the states. Okay. And the state convention would just be with legislators. Okay. The people wouldn't actually vote on this. So here to here, okay, we have 27 amendments. 26 of our amendments were like that. Okay. One amendment went from here to here. There's literally 2 other ways to ratify or change the Constitution that's never been used. Okay? That makes sense? So we got, okay, technically 17, but, all right. So the only one that's been done here to here was when they repealed prohibition. Because everybody realized after a few years that this was dumb, we made a mistake, and we need to get prohibition off here. We're not gonna let the people vote on it. Went here, sent it to the states knew that it needed to be repealed. All right, so prohibition was taken off there, okay? So the other ones are national conventions, and then again, you can have the people vote on it, national convention, you can have state conventions vote on it, okay? We'll get into those a little more deeper later, but those are the ways to amend the Constitution, basically. A couple other things we've had here, so informal processes, okay, judicial interpretation. So Marbury versus Madison gives us judicial review. It doesn't change the Constitution, it just changes how laws are interpreted, okay? Changing political practices. The Constitution is uber vague because the founders didn't know what would happen over the course of 10 years, 30 years, 100 years, 200 years, okay? Technology, increasing demands on policymakers. So this thing is uber vague on purpose. The only place it gets, at the time, got specific was in the Bill of Rights. Right? So there's ways to change it without, it's not change. There's ways to adjust the Constitution without ever making it a vote. Okay? A lot of that is judicial review, making things unconstitutional, that type of stuff. So, a couple things. Constitution, technically it's short for a Constitution. It's like 8,000 words. Okay, does not prescribe every detail. Okay, there's no mention of congressional committees, independent regulatory agencies that we have now. Okay, it's not static, flexible. Okay, future generations determine how it's going to be needed. That type of stuff. Okay, so there's changes in it that can be made at any time. Basically, at this point, this thing's done, okay? 1780's done, let me put it that way, okay? So, understanding it, we'll hit this thing so much, I'm not overly concerned about it, okay? All right, notes are done there, all right?